Hey guys, and welcome back to another Dragonflight Season 3 Mythic Dungeon boss guide on another favourite of mine, which is the famous Waycrest Manor. Take it away, Gertie. Right, with that scene that's always in my head when I run this dungeon, let's get things underway. So with the first boss we have the Heartsbane Triad featuring Selena, Milady and Briar. These sisters will keep throwing single target bulk spells, and the most important thing is to interrupt the sister that has the focusing iris. When they have this, it does a lot of extra damage, so always be wary of your interrupt cooldowns for your party. During the fight, the Selena sister will cast Soul Manipulation, which will mind control a player. Make sure to damage the target to break out of the charm and continue on the boss. If you have any stuns in your arsenal, it's good to always use these if available. With the iris now given to Milady, you'll then have her cast Aura of Dread, which are the purple rings shown. Keep moving to reduce these stacks, otherwise you're going to get inflicted with more shadow damage every second. This sister will also cast Unstable Runic Mark, which simply curses you, inflicting even more shadow damage. Any magical immunity or dispels that can get rid of curses is highly valuable. As soon as Milady is around 50% health, she will then chuck the iris to the final sister Briar. Briar will then randomly target a player with Jagged Nettle, so healers be on high alert as this deals out a lot of physical ticking damage. Healing the target player up to 90% will prevent any more damage being done to them. Now while this is all happening, she will have the Aura of Thorns, which every time she gets hit, it inflicts physical damage to that player. So all in all, a busy boss fight to not get healers caught napping. The order of the sisters will then reset until all three of them are defeated. It does feel a bit juggly at first, but once you get used to the switching of the iris and the individual boss abilities, it's a walk in the park. Or in this case, a walk in a creepy haunted mansion. Either way, healers especially, have fun in this fight. Next is Soulbound Goliath. Now the main thing to know in this fight is that Goliath gets a stack of Soul Harvest every 2 seconds. This makes his damage increase by 5% per stack. In order to remove these said stacks, there will be fire patches to run through that eventually appear from the incoming lightning strikes. So tanks, be sure to clear these whenever you think the boss is doing too much. Watch out for Soul Thorns as this will entangle a player. DPS, be sure to immediately switch to that target in order to free the player quicker and do more big boy damage. Always remember to not clear any of Goliath's Soul Harvest stacks while a player is trapped, otherwise that player will simply be killed off. So make sure to avoid getting the stacks to a high amount, as the boss's crush ability will be extremely painful, which can one-shot the tank. So keep a lookout for those wildfire patches as you go through the fight. You'll also come across some glowy fiery mobs that simply want to give you a nice friendly yet painful cuddle. Be sure to avoid these guys as they will deal heavy damage if they touch you and you cannot kill them. Just simply run for dear life if you're near one of them if you want to keep the healer happy. The third boss is a handsome looking fella called Ral the Gluttonous. During this fight you're going to need to avoid a few frontal moves which the boss will cast. The first one would be Rotten Explosion, which will then spawn some oozlings, so be sure to kill these off quickly. The other will be a frontal called Tenderize, which will be 3 consecutive waves of it, so keep an eye on where the boss is positioned to stray from side to side. Intermittently throughout this fight he's also going to cast Cool Servant, which enables 4 servant mobs to slowly walk towards him. Once they're in range of him, they'll be gobbled up to trigger a debuff called Gluttonous Bile on every player. This simply cannot be dispelled, and yep, you guessed it, this buff stacks. So make sure to switch on those mobs as soon as you can. So if any of the servants do manage to reach him, healers, get your cooldowns ready for some spicy healing. And so we now come to meet the famous Lady Waycrest herself along with her husband Lord Waycrest. So this boss is basically a two-phase fight. Phase 1 will be fighting the husband, while in phase 2 we'll be fighting both bosses together. On phase 1, Lord Waycrest will spew out virulent pathogens, so if you have a disease to spell, this is now the time to use it. Otherwise, if you're short on those, it's going to trigger a second effect called Contagious Remnants. So make sure to avoid getting hit by the ground effect and having that pathogen debuff being applied again. For the tanks, watch out for Wasting Strike as this gets moderately casted, which deals a lot of nature damage, so be mindful on how you use defenses, and for the healer to always keep a lookout on their health. For the healers, be mindful of Racking Cord as Lady Waycrest will repeatedly cast this throughout the fight. She'll also be casting Vitality Transfer, which gives the hubby a stack of Putrid Vitality, which increases his damage and haste by 3% per stack. So when it comes to phase 2, be very careful on how you manage your defensive cooldowns to avoid being overwhelmed. And lastly, to avoid the Discordant Cadenza, which are the bluey purple swellies on the ground. Into the final boss, which is Garaktul. The most important thing you have to know is that he'll spawn Death Touch Slaver mobs throughout the fight. They use an ability called Dark Leap on the furthest player from the boss and will cast Death Lens, which needs to be interrupted at all costs. Now with these spawns, once you've killed them, you will then need to finish them off by using alchemical fire which appear on the ground. Throw the fire on top of their corpse to avoid them being regenerated from the boss's cast called Dread Essence. This also deals massive shadow damage as well as resurrecting every Death Touch Slayer to maximum health. So for the tanks, be sure to stack all the slayers on top of the boss. For the healers, get prepared for loads of AoE damage from the Dread Essence casts. As for the DPS, just spread fairly well to help kill the ads as quickly as possible so that you can maximise on damaging that boss. And lastly, keep interrupting Dark and Lightning as this deals heavy damage which then jumps onto a nearby player. Rinse and repeat the process, which you'll then have the final boss down, and that's Waycrest Manor Season 3 Mythic Plus. As always folks, thank you again for watching this video. I'll be uploading the next video which will be Dark Card Thicket in the next coming week, so stay tuned for that. Thanks again and happy dungeoning!